Hi everyone, welcome to my brand new video. This is Ijulam. In this video, we are going to explore Microsoft 365 Copilot Cowork. What is it, what it can do, and how it can help us get more work done across M365. Imagine having an assistant who doesn't just answer your questions, but actually helps get the work done. That's the idea behind Microsoft 365 Copilot Cowork. You describe what you want using normal language, and Cowork can carry out tasks across M365. For example, instead of asking, "How do I schedule the meeting?" you can ask Cowork to schedule the meeting for you. Instead of asking how to create a report, you can ask it to create one. So the important shift here is simple. We are moving from AI that answers to AI that acts. Now let's look at what Cowork can actually do. Cowork covers a surprisingly broad set of everyday work. It can work with Outlook for sending and replying to emails, manage your calendar, create meetings, and handle attachments. It can also create or edit Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint presentations, and PDFs. You can ask it to post messages in Teams, search your organization's information, work with OneDrive and SharePoint files, and even perform deeper research across multiple sources. For instance, suppose you need a weekly project update. You could ask Cowork to review relevant files, identify the important changes, prepare an update, and create the document. That is much closer to having a digital coworker than simply having a chatbot. Before jumping into Cowork, there are a few prerequisites. First, you need access to M365 Copilot. Cowork works through the M365 Copilot experience in the browser and in the M365 Copilot desktop app. You also need the appropriate Copilot license, and there is an additional tenant requirement, that is, Anthropic needs to be enabled because Cowork uses Anthropic models as a sub-processor. These requirements should be checked frequently because Copilot is ever-changing field, so you should be aware what are the changes which are coming. This last requirement, that is Anthropic, is particularly important for administrators. Cowork availability isn't simply a matter of opening the application, tenant configuration and licensing matter too. Here is the interesting part. Cowork doesn't need coffee. It doesn't take lunch. And apparently it doesn't complain about meetings. But there is one thing it definitely needs: clear instructions. And importantly, Cowork doesn't simply run off and perform sensitive actions without asking you. We will see that approval step next. Starting with Cowork is intentionally simple. Open M365 Copilot and select Cowork from the toggle next to chat. Then describe what you want. For example, prepare a weekly project update using the latest project files and draft an email for them. Notice that we are describing the outcome, not giving Cowork a technical procedure. That is one of the most useful concepts to understand. You are telling Cowork what needs to be accomplished, and Cowork determines the steps required. Before we continue, I hope you're finding this course helpful and enjoying the learning journey so far. If you're getting value from these lessons, I would really appreciate your support. Please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing your thoughts or questions in the comments. Your support helps us create more free, high-quality learning content for everyone. Thank you, and let's continue learning together. One of the interesting differences with Cowork is that you can follow what it is doing. Instead of waiting for a mysterious final answer, Cowork can show progress through different stages. You may see it loading a skill, composing an email, creating a presentation, or working with another type of file. It can also stop and ask you for clarification. For example, if your request doesn't specify which meeting or which document you mean, Cowork may ask you to choose, and that is actually useful. It gives you an opportunity to correct the direction before the task goes too far. A good instruction is important, but context is equally important. You can attach files directly to the conversation. You can also attach cloud files from OneDrive, SharePoint, or Teams. And where supported, you can use voice input instead of typing. Imagine you are preparing for a customer review. You could provide the project report, the latest presentation, and supporting documents. Then ask Cowork to prepare a customer-ready summary. The more relevant context you provide, the less guesswork is required. One limitation is important to mention here. Cowork works with information it is authorized to access. It is not a shortcut around M365 permissions. This is actually a funny problem we all face at work. Sometimes we think we are being extremely clear. We tell a colleague, please prepare the report, and we expect them to immediately know which report we are talking about. But then comes the obvious question, which report? And then we say, the report, as if that somehow made things clearer. The problem isn't that the person doesn't know how to prepare a report. The problem is that we haven't provided enough context. And the same thing applies when we are working with AI as well. Cowork may be capable of creating a report, but it still needs to understand which report, what information to use, who it is for, and what the expected outcome is. So instead of saying, prepare the report, we could say, review this week's project tracker and meeting notes, prepare a one-page project update covering progress, risks, and next steps, and draft an email for the project team. Now the request is much clearer. Notice what changed. We didn't make the instruction technically complicated. We simply provided more useful context, and that is an important principle when working with Cowork. Don't just tell AI what to do. Give it enough context to understand what result should look like. So, whenever Cowork gives you a result that isn't quite what you have expected, don't immediately assume that the AI failed. First, ask yourself, did I give it enough context? And now, let's actually see what happens when we give Cowork a real workplace task. This is one of the most important parts of Cowork. When Cowork is about to perform an action on your behalf, such as sending an email, posting in Teams, or scheduling a meeting, it asks for permission. You see what it's planning to do before the action happens. You can approve it, cancel it, or in some cases, choose always allow for similar actions in the current conversation. But don't treat approval as something to blindly click through. Microsoft specifically recommends reviewing recipients, content, and other parameter before approving an action. So the model is AI proposes, human reviews, AI executes. After Cowork works on a task, you can review both the process and the result. The side panel provides areas for progress, input files, output files, skills, schedules, and permissions. If Cowork creates a document or presentation, you can preview supported formats directly in the conversation. You don't necessarily need to download the file just to inspect it. For example, if Cowork creates a PowerPoint presentation, you can preview it, check the content, and then open it in the native application if you want to continue editing. Cowork also gives you control while the task is running. You can pause it, resume it, or cancel it completely. This becomes useful when you notice that the task is heading in the wrong direction. For example, perhaps you asked Cowork to prepare a report and then realized that you forgot to mention an important source. Instead of waiting for everything to finish, you can intervene. Think of it like a think of it less like a pressing run on a script and more like supervising an assistant while the work is happening. If you have worked in IT long enough, you know one question always appears. Can we stop it? With Cowork, you have pause and cancel controls. But the bigger lesson is even more important. Don't wait until something goes wrong. Review the proposed action before approving it. Behind the scenes, Cowork uses specialized skills. For example, creating a PowerPoint presentation requires a different capability from managing a calendar event. The available skills include areas such as PDF, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, calendar management, meetings, scheduling, communications, and skills management. This gives Cowork a more structured way of handling different types of work. And there is an interesting extension here. Organizations can create their own custom skills as well. Custom skills allow organizations to extend what Cowork can do. The source documentation describes storing custom skills in a specific Cowork skills folder in OneDrive. A skill uses a SKILL.md file containing its name, description, and instructions. Cowork can discover these custom skills when a conversation starts. You can also share a skill with specific users in your organization. Imagine an organization has a standard process for preparing weekly operational reports. Instead of explaining that process every time, a custom skill could provide Cowork with the organization's standard instructions that can make recurring work much more consistent. When you start using Cowork for different tasks, you may have several things happening at the same time. One task might be waiting for your answer, another might still be running, another might already be finished, and you might have another task scheduled for later. So instead of trying to remember what is happening with every task, Cowork gives you My Tasks. Think of My Tasks as your control panel for Cowork work. Here, you can quickly see four important things. Needs your input, that is, Cowork is waiting for you to answer something. Second one, in progress, that is, Cowork is still working on it. And third one is completed tasks, Cowork has finished the task. And fourth one is scheduled task, the task is set to run later. For example, imagine you asked Cowork to prepare three things: your weekly report, a meeting summary, and a Friday email briefing. You could open My Tasks and immediately see which one is still running, which one needs your input, and which ones are already finished. So you don't need to think of My Task as another complicated feature. Just remember, My Task is equals to see what is happening with your Cowork tasks. That's all. And when you're working with multiple tasks, this becomes your one place to keep track of them. Now that we know how to manage individual tasks, let's look at something even more useful, getting Cowork to run a task automatically on a schedule. Another powerful capability is scheduling. Instead of manually repeating the same request every week, you can ask Cowork to run a prompt automatically. For example, every Friday at 3 p.m., summarize my unread emails from this week. Cowork can create the schedule and ask for your approval before activating it. You can later edit, pause, or cancel scheduled prompts. This is where Cowork starts becoming more than an assistant you talk to. It becomes part of a recurring workflow. We have all seen this happen. A weekly report starts as a manual task, then someone forgets. Then someone sends the reminder, and then another reminder. Scheduling can remove that repetitive loop, and that is one of the places where AI automation can have a very practical business impact. Before we finish, there are some practical boundaries to remember. Cowork can misinterpret vague or overly broad instructions. Search results may be incomplete if organizational information isn't indexed or is outdated. Complex tasks with many dependencies may not always complete perfectly. And Cowork can only access information and services that your Microsoft 365 account is authorized to use. There is also an important limitation around files. Cowork cannot simply reach into your local computer and access arbitrary files. Files need to be provided through supported mechanisms or connected cloud services. And most importantly, treat AI-generated emails, documents, and messages as drafts until you have reviewed them. Here is the simplest way to remember what we have discussed. Cowork can work quickly. It can work across many M365 services. It can also handle multi-step tasks on your behalf. But like any AI system, it can still make mistakes. So don't think of Cowork as AI does everything. Think of it as AI does more of the work while keeping people in charge. You provide the goal and the context. Cowork can work through the task, but people still review the results and approve important actions. That's the really value of Cowork. Let AI handle more of the work while people remain in charge of the important decisions and actions. In other words, we are not handing over complete control to AI. We are using AI to reduce the manual work while keeping people in charge. In my previous videos, I have discussed Skills Scout, and today we are discussing about Cowork. If you have not gone through my previous videos, please go through them to understand Skills and Scout thoroughly. Let's use one simple office example to understand the difference. Imagine your team has a standard format for a weekly project report. First, we have a skill. The skill doesn't prepare the report by itself. Instead, it contains the specialized instructions. For example, it might say, use this report structure, include project status, risks, completed work, upcoming work, and follow this formatting. So think of the skill as the knowledge and instructions for doing a particular type of work. Now we have Cowork. You tell Cowork, prepare my weekly report. Cowork takes your request, decides what work needs to be done, and can activate the appropriate skills while coordinating the different steps. So Cowork is the worker that executes the request. And this is where the distinction becomes important. The skill tells Cowork how. Cowork carries out the task. Microsoft's documentation specifically describes Cowork as using specialized skills as it works, with skills being activated according to the task. Now let's look at Microsoft Scout. Scout is different again. It is designed as an always-on personal agent. Microsoft describes Scout as being able to understand work context and proactively handle things such as meeting preparation, scheduling conflicts, upcoming deliverables, and routine tasks without requiring a new prompt every time. So remember, skill is teaching how, Cowork is executes your request, and Scout is it acts proactively. That gives us a much cleaner separation. One very simple analogy here. Skill. Here is the company's recipe for making the report. This is skill. I'll make the report you asked for. This is Cowork. I notice the report is due tomorrow. I will start preparing what is needed. This is Scout. I hope you will be able to understand the difference now with this example. And that's all for today. We understood what is Cowork. We differentiated between Skills, Cowork, and Microsoft Scout. Thank you for your time. Have a great day ahead. Bye for now.